Meantime, I want to bring in an analyst who covers Tesla, Craig Irwin, managing director at Roth Capital Partners. Craig has a neutral rating.
Good morning.
On the stock. Good morning to you. What do you make of this sort of downside worst-case scenario that one of your peers, if you will, has now offered up at $10?
So the reason we weren't more bearish when we rolled coverage back out several months back is the bid from Apple. Around 2013, there was a serious bid from Apple at around $240 a share. This is something we did multiple checks on. I have complete confidence that this is accurate.
That Apple bid for Tesla?
Apple bid for Tesla. I don't know if it got to a formal paperwork stage, but I know from multiple different sources that this was very credible. So right now, Apple is building multiple very large dry rooms in California. What does that mean? They're doing something interesting and exciting on the battery side. Project Titan is absolutely not dead. If Apple had interest then, they would probably have interest now at the right price, and I expect there are other technology companies that would also step in.
Like a crazy Hail Mary sort of. Well, even if it's worth not much, there's a buyer out there potentially?
So, you know, if you look at a company that's selling 300,000 units and that's set the pace in the market, realistically, that's a fair price. These guys are years out ahead of the competition on things like silicon carbide. They were the first major contract for silicon carbide MOSFETs in the market, buying chips from Cree. That really pulled the silicon carbide market forward. Now, today, everybody knows that the converter in the Model 3, the Model S, and the Model X has silicon carbide MOSFETs in it instead of JFETs. We learned in Nuremberg 2 weeks ago that every single EV that's coming to market is going to have silicon carbide MOSFETs in it going forward. Tesla has set the pace on new technology adoption and really pushed the pedal on an industry that is very stodgy.
But are you talking about stripping it down and taking the intellectual property, or are you talking about getting Elon Musk and getting his creative genius and taking it going forward? If everybody already has this technology that you're talking about, you want the next generation?
So Tesla is very much a technology company that looks like a car company, right? The culture is that of a technology company, moves much faster, much less risk-averse maybe than some of their competitors, but they do a decent job in mitigating that. So that's the value. The value is a company that moves fast.
Your bottom line then, in terms of a floor on this stock, is what?
You know, our target right now is 238. I think, you know, it's unlikely in the short term to go dramatically lower. You know, is it going to pierce significantly below 200? I don't know. It's difficult to call that. One of the things that's always difficult is the headline news, and we've had nothing.
You said, is it going to pierce 200? It's already
well, no,
200.
it's pierced, but is it going to go to 170 or 150 or 120?
What do you think the natural?
You know, I'm not making that call.
What do you think the natural demand for Model 3 and just the entire lineup is right now? Because clearly we went through Elon Musk called it the S-curve of just how difficult it was to manage the supply issue. But now we don't have a supply issue anymore. Now we have maybe too many.
That's absolutely right. So my entire thesis on Tesla has been that they were misrepresenting their battery costs, that the actual cost was $240 a kilowatt hour. Volkswagen, which is coming with 22 models in China this year, they're paying $250 a kilowatt hour at the cell level. I think the actual market size is probably in the range of 500,000 to 700,000 units addressable a year, but they're not the only one that's going to address this. There are multiple other credible OEMs.
500, 700 in total for the whole market.
For the category that the Model 3 is chasing.
Yeah, but Andrew's question, which is a question that I have as well, was what happened to demand? It was the inability to meet demand. You know, they just had so many orders, and now all of a sudden, you know, the tax credits went away, but now demand is like falling away. So what's happening to demand?
So the demand was theoretical based on a $35,000 price, right? And we saw multiple adjustments to the price. And now that, you know, they're claiming they have a $35,000 car, but, you know, you got to get it in black, and, you know, you got to pay for seats, and, you know, if you want autonomous, you have to pay additional. It's really like a $45,000 car. At the $35,000 price point, I think there really is a lot more demand. Maybe we have.
Okay, so worst case scenario implies worst case scenario. Let's say there's 10 things that can go wrong, and you're 10 for 10. I mean, the whole financial structure of the company, everything goes away. It's as bad as it gets. Is 10 like, does that make sense to you
Listen,
that it stops at 10 or does it go to 0?
Seriously, I mean, 10 is kind of ridiculous. I mean, either it's a 0
right.
or it's something, you know,
Would there be
materially
any,
higher than 10.
if everything happened and there's no equity left, then you're just, as a bondholder, you're just hoping you get something at that point. Right?
I mean, exactly. So if this ends up that distressed that it's at the $10 level, it's going under.
Do you know anything about the way margin calls might work for Elon Musk himself and how that relates to and how that relates to his own economics? And it's an important question because he's borrowed somewhere between $800 million and more from the company. He obviously has a huge stake in SpaceX, which we believe is a profitable company and has true value, which he can pledge as collateral, I imagine. But sort of how that whole thing works?
So the big hedge funds are all asking that question right now. A lot of people think that that started to kick in below 230. So maybe there's some adjustments that have been made.
Is that why you see pressure on the stock every day?
It's possible. It's entirely possible. But I think we would have to be notified if there was significant selling on the part of Mr. Musk. Maybe there's some other structured mechanism being used as far as swaps or something like that with another position.
Right. Is there a tipping point or something that you see out in the future that would be a positive sign for this company? Meaning, is there something that you're waiting for that would push the stock back?
So culturally, Tesla's a very different company than the automotive guys that they compete with, right? So the automotive guys are about making money. So selling units is very important, but the profitability and the margins and the dollar margin is very, very important. Tesla is about growth and going after a massive new market. If we see a go slow from the automotive guys, the traditional automotive guys, continue to be the status quo, that would end up being positive for Tesla.